Vince Gill doesn't like to talk about the past. He's let the music do it for him for decades. One name, though, keeps coming back to his mind lately. She was Patty Loveless, and her voice matched his pain. Her quiet said more than any love song ever could. Even though they were never together, the way they worked together marked a time in country music. When they spoke together, the room changed in some way. It was clear to you. Something important that wasn't said. It was called harmony in Nashville. Fans said it was fate. Vince said it was a good thing. At age 68, he's finally ready to say why he's kept that bond a secret for so long. In spite of all these years, he still can't talk about Patty Loveless without getting emotional. What did he really have to do with her? Before the early 1990s, country music was going through a big change. There were still a lot of steel guitars, but pop sounds were starting to show up. A lot of new acts were coming to Nashville, and they were all trying to find a way to stand out. Vince Gill already had one. His songs had clean tones that could make a room quiet. The words to his songs stuck with people for a long time. They met backstage at an awards show. Patty Loveless was on the rise quickly, and her music had the mountain soul of Kentucky in it. Neither of them could have known that it would be the start of one of the most powerful teams in country music history. Soon after, they shared a stage for the first time. There was no build-up for the press or a show, just two voices striking a perfect balance. The crowd saw it before they did. Vince sang with great accuracy, and Patty sang with fire. Hearing them together in the middle made it sound like memory and destiny were one. People who work in the field leaned forward, shocked by the chemistry. It wasn't just another performance. It seemed like something that was meant to last. They were drawn together not by love, but by understanding. As kids, they both lived in small southern towns with gospel music and lots of sadness. They knew what it was like to work hard and fight for a spot in a field that had forgotten its roots. Their sound was linked by the fact that they had a past together. Vince later said that it was like singing with someone who knew what he was going to say before he said it. After that one night, the invites kept coming in. They sang together in TV shows, charity events, and last-minute shows at the Opry. Every time, the link got stronger. They didn't have a plan or try to get more attention. They just knew that their voices would sound better together. Fans began to want their duets more than their single shows. A lot of artists began to talk about it. One experienced producer said that the mix of light and dark was like meeting in the middle. It was more than just harmony that made it memorable. It was the feeling behind it. Patty's voice had the pain of the mountains and the harsh-won grace of her upbringing in it. Every story Vince had ever sung had given him weight, regret, and sympathy. They worked together to make something holy. Patty raised a line when Vince leaned into it. His voice kept her steady when hers shook. The music was a way to connect with each other, not a show. Nashville knew they had found something special by the end of that season. Their names began to show up together on liner notes and award votes. But there was something softer beyond the light. Respect, thanks, and a calm sense were what they found in each other. What every artist wants. Someone who really hears them. They both kept quiet about it, and maybe that was part of the magic. Their story wasn't in a gossip piece or an interview. The songs, practices, and the silence between two voices that could understand each other perfectly helped write it. After just one show, they became close friends that would last longer than the fame and change both of their lives forever. Vince Gill was famous all over the place by 1991. Radio, award shows, and late-night TV. His songs were more than just hits. They were like admissions. On the other hand, Patty Loveless had made a name for herself with that haunting Appalachian tone that could make any song line sound like the truth. Both of them had lived in Nashville long enough to know that success could mean nothing in a hurry. But everything changed on a quiet afternoon of practice before a show for the business. They were going to sing together for the very first time. The room was almost empty. There are only a few players, 2 microphones, and a soundboard. To check the key, Vince strummed a few soft chords. Patty joined in, and her voice soared above his guitar. Suddenly, something changed in the air. The engineer stopped moving. There wasn't even any talk in the hallway. It wasn't just a mix of sounds that came out of that practice. It was the find of something very rare. Together, these 2 artists sounded more real than they did on their own. After that, Vince left quietly, almost scared. He was sure of what he heard. And Patty did too. Neither said a lot. They had found something simple and holy in a noisy and egotistical field. Their harmony made me think of gospel choirs, front porch hymns, and sadness in small towns. It wasn't planned, and it couldn't happen again. The crowd stood up in the middle of that song when they played it live a week later. There are no fireworks or band solos. There are just 2 sounds that meet in the middle. Some people said it was just chemistry, but it was more than that. It was just a connection without any reason. Vince was precise, and Patty was emotional. They were like the 2 parts of a story. It was an unusually trusting sound in country music, almost as rare between 2 stars. When the show was over, the whispers started. People who lived in Nashville knew what they had seen. The bosses wanted them to be on stage together again. Artists began to compare their performances to those of George, Tammy Conway, and Loretta. Vince and Patty, on the other hand, had something else. Not a lot of drama or competition, just a lot of respect. He had found someone who knew what it was like to be famous and alone in between cheers, and the price of being perfect. On that night, a relationship began that would grow without titles or promises. They didn't go into too much detail. That could be why it lasted. When fans looked back on the great duets of the time, one thing jumped out. People like Vince Gill and Patty Loveless didn't try to be famous. It's where they met. Also, that first practice, which no one else seemed to notice, brought together one of the best pairs in country music. They didn't fall in love in their story. It was about getting things in balance. 2 sounds from the same hills with the same message for people who still think country music can heal. Everything changed that night. Even though everyone would not understand why for a long time. Putting on shows together as Vince Gill and Patty Loveless didn't seem like a career move. It seemed like it had to happen. In the early 1990s, Nashville was full of well-known artists. Still, when they stood next to each other, these 2 voices were heard over the noise. It looked like the air got tighter. Vince had the kindness of someone who tells stories. Patty brought the mountain pain with her. The melody that came out of it sounded older than both of them. In the beginning, their duets weren't big hit songs. It was a real, unplanned, and amazing moment. Most of the time, they hadn't practiced for years, but they sang like they had. Patty would know exactly what to do next when Vince looked away in the middle of a song. They looked forward to each other like when family singers used to do that at cooking tables. The way they played music was so unique that it couldn't be taught or practiced. Backstage, they were very different. Vince was friendly and open, and he was known for his soft humor. Patty was calmer and more focused, and before a show she often got lost in her own thoughts. All of those differences worked together, though. He held her steady. She put him down. Vince often said that all he needed to calm down before a big show was to hear Patty start the chorus. After that, everything would go as planned. Fans began to notice that their link stayed strong. When they played at an awards show or a benefit performance, they always had the same calm intensity. There was no acting or fake smiles, just trust between them. People were waiting for Patty to show up when Vince was performing by himself. People would start to cheer before she even sang a note. They didn't talk much about success behind closed doors. Both knew what fame cost. Both had lost loved ones along the way. When they go on tour, they lose mentors, friends, and even parts of themselves. That could be why they were so close. That wasn't what it was built on. It was built on knowing each other. Vince often talked about how singing with her made him remember why he loved country music in the first place. The friendship between them didn't need any attention. It was not public for them to eat or talk on the phone together. But when they went into a studio or on stage, they mixed into one sound. The rough parts of her voice were picked up by his smooth tenor, which gave his smooth voice more truth. This was the first time Nashville had ever seen a team like this. Some critics called their mix the soul of modern country. By that time, both had moved on to other projects, but they couldn't get rid of what they'd made together. Fans were able to see what made those early acts so honest years later, when they watched them again. Vince and Patty didn't follow fads. They followed how they felt. The people in the room could feel it every time their voices met. By 1992, Vince Gill and Patty Loveless were seen as more than just a duo pair in Nashville. They were going to be famous. The way they played didn't just sound good, it felt like they were really there. People who were very loud stopped moving when they were on stage together, like they were waiting for something holy to happen. The producers wanted to bring the energy into the studio. But Vince and Patty didn't want it to be a recipe. They were aware that it couldn't be done again under stress. Their sound was strong not because of how well they played. It was trust. Vince's words held years of pain in his heart, and Patty's tone turned them into freedom. They made pain sound beautiful when they played together. They worked in almost silence behind the scenes. Just a nod from Vince was enough for Patty to find peace. She gave him a half smile to let him know that he was right. They didn't try to be perfect. They were looking for the truth. No one wanted to leave when the meeting was over. A lot of the time, engineers and artists stayed to listen to playback because they knew that something they heard might never happen again. Some people started to compare them to the greats, but their relationship stayed close. They never advertised themselves as a pair and never sold the idea. Vince had been through loss and rebuilding, and Patty's stability became a rock for him. His warmth made her remember why she had chosen music in the first place. The songs got more moving as the years went by. When Vince put out When I Call Your Name, people could hear Patty's voice even though she wasn't on the record. Fans heard hints of the same pain they felt on stage when she recorded You Don't Even Know Who I Am. They began writing two parts of the same dramatic story without realizing it. They were different because they were calm. They didn't force people to work together or spread rumors. They waited until it felt like the right time. Each show turned into its own story. Not much was said about this short meeting of minds. It was magic for the crowds. For them, it meant getting it. By the middle of the 1990s, their relationship was an important part of what country music was all about. Two sounds that made people think of everything that this type of music should be. Honest, humble, and a person. By the end of the 1990s, they were going in different ways. Vince was traveling, getting awards, and working with famous rock musicians all over the place. Patty began to back off because she wanted the quieter life she had always dreamed of. She had never wanted to be famous. Even though their jobs were moving in different directions, peace was still there. Their voices wouldn't let go of each other. Vaughn never far away when Vince lost close friends or family. She didn't say anything in public, but she was there when it counted. At memorials for him, she would stand next to him and add her harmony to songs that were meant to comfort the mourning. As the nights went on, their songs became less like shows and more like prayers. Fans knew it. Vince's voice showed sadness, and Patty's showed hope. They seemed to meet in the middle in a place that only they could understand. Nashville said they would last forever, but they were running out of time. New styles were making the country sound they had helped keep alive fade away. Still, they kept going back to each other's stages to quietly guard what they had made. When everyone else thought they were big, they never tried to cash in on it by making a joint record. That was the point, though. They weren't selling what they had. It was secret and recorded in real time, so it couldn't be streamed or copied. Artists of all ages started to pay attention. A lot of people said that seeing them together was like hearing an old language spoken perfectly, one that people in the modern country had almost forgotten. It was called Grace by Patty. Vince said it was a friendship. It was more than just music, whatever it was. Fans were informed of how rare their connection was at every reunion. After many years, when they sang, "Go rest high on that mountain," it wasn't out of affection. That was proof. Their voices had grown older and softer, but the way they felt hadn't changed. They were different from the people whose stories they used to sing, and each line held the weight of everything that wasn't said. Vince Gill had already won every award Nashville could give him by the time he was in his 60s. But when people asked him what made him most happy, he never brought up trophies. He talked about hearing things. There was always one name that got missed: Patty Loveless. They had seen each other for more than 30 years. However, something about those later years made the link even more clear. The star flash was over, leaving only what was real. On small tribute or benefit shows where they played together, there was no showmanship left. It was just two pros doing what they'd always done best, making you feel every note. Their bond had grown stronger. They didn't have to prove anything to anyone, not even themselves. Patty's name came up a lot when Vince talked about his faith. He told her that she made him think of his roots and the good old days when country music was still like church, simple, honest, and real. For her, Vince stood for grace under pressure. Even after disaster, job changes, and losing someone close to him, he never lost the kindness that made people love him in the first place. Many people thought Patty's story was over when she stopped touring. But every time Vince sang a song about faith or farewell, her choir would come back on stage to honor or remember her. That thread that they couldn't see never broke. They were often looked up to by younger singers as examples of how to work together effectively without causing trouble. Their tale turned into a quiet lesson. When people are really connected, the link gets stronger over time. When asked about it, Vince once said that music could bring back the people you need at the exact moment you need them. Everyone knew her name, even though he never said it. As the years went by, they showed up less often, which made people love them even more. People came to feel nostalgic, but they stayed for something else. A warning that true harmony can last through all of life's ups and downs. In front of the stage lights, two old friends from Kentucky proved it once more. Vince Gill and Patty Loveless had been together for decades before they got back together on the CMA stage in 2023. The crowd thought it was about the past. Vince thought it was unfinished business. He had spent years letting songs speak for him, but some feelings wouldn't stay hidden in the music. Old age had made both of their voices softer. But when they sang together again, for a moment, the sound of their youth came back. That mix of weakness and power said something that words could never say. They had been through everything the song said would happen. Wins, losses, and staying alive. Vince was more thankful than longing when he looked at Patty during the show. A silent thank you for always being there when it counted for all the years. Patty had not been after fame for years, but she hadn't gone away either. She picked the peaceful road, her family, her faith, and the mountains where she grew up. People still remembered why she was important every time she joined Vince. He said that great singers do more than just hit notes. They heal people. And she helped him with that. That night, when the last chord died down, Vince didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The story was told by the silence between them. A lifelong bond shaped by music that was sealed in peace that lasted longer than anything else. Vince Gill did something after the show that he had never done before in his career. He told it like it was about Patty Loveless. There was no acting or rhetoric. There was only the truth. He said she was one of the few singers who could make a song into a prayer. Someone who played country music with an old-fashioned feel when everyone else was after the charts. His answer to questions about their relationship for years was, "No." That night, there was no more quiet. He didn't call her a partner or even a friend. He just called her a steady. Patty was there for him when his father died, when Keith Whitley died, and when fame started to feel empty. Sometimes she did it in person, and other times it was just her voice on the radio. She didn't say anything to make him feel better. She sang. He said that's how she always does it, even when she doesn't want praise or attention. When asked later, Patty did nothing but smile. She said Vince didn't have to say anything. It might have stayed together because their story was always in the song. Others tried to get attention, but they built a reputation. Two artists who never let their egos get in the way of their work and who held harmony in high regard. For decades, Vince had not spoken about Patty Loveless. When he finally did, he confirmed for his fans what they had long felt but never heard, that she was more than just a part of his business. She was part of his soul. Videos of Vince and Patty were all over the internet for weeks after that CMA show. Younger people found them for the first time because of how simple what they shared was. There were no bright lights or special effects. Just two voices telling a story that went back decades. It felt like the end for longtime fans. Vince thought it was peace. After that, he didn't agree to talks. It was enough for the act to say. People who knew him well noticed a change. He seemed calm and happy, as if he'd finally let go of something that had been bothering him for too long. For all his life, he had given life to other people's stories. But that song with Patty by his side was the first time he told his own. Patty went back to living in the woods, away from the news, but she still remembered that moment. Her friends said it was the right way to end a long episode. They had never had to explain how they were connected. When the music stopped, the way they looked at each other always showed the truth. Fans didn't just feel nostalgic when they saw them again. It made me think of what country music used to be all about. Trust, loyalty, and truth that didn't need to be explained. Vince finally spoke up, but not to admit. Instead, he was thankful. That was enough for Patty Loveless. Check out this for more sad stories.